Great. So we're going to basically three topics tonight. First off is about the jewelry that of women that they may not wear on Shabbat, and then we'll move on to items that men may not wear on Shabbat. And among that will be these special sandals, and that will take us to the rest of the day. So starting off with the items that a woman can't wear, we're discussing the very last, the last one on the list. Well, not the last, there's a few more, which is a ring. And our Mishnah says that a ring that has no seal on it, I'll show you what the seal looks like here, right? If there's a plain ring, she may not wear it, midrabanan. In other words, she really is allowed to wear it because it's jewelry, and she's allowed to wear jewelry, but the rabbis are afraid that she might take it off and show her friends. So a plain ring, midoraita, is okay. But we infer from the Mishnah that if it has a seal on it, then it's not jewelry, but rather this is a useful item for stamping documents. And so therefore, since it's not jewelry, she may not wear it at all, midoraita, on Shabbat. So that's what we said here. Now, problem was that we have another source, a Mishnah in Kelim, different source, so not talking about Shabbat, but talking about the laws of Tum'ah and Tahara. And in those laws, for something to be able to receive Tum'ah, it has to be a utensil, right? Otherwise it's not considered anything. And so in those laws, it defines what is jewelry of women, and it gives a whole list. And included in the list is tabat ben sheyesh alei chotam, ben she'en alei chotam, which makes it sound like a ring with or without a seal is considered jewelry, and if it is jewelry, then it should be permitted for her to wear on Shabbat. So we now have a contradiction between these two Mishnayot, and we're going to offer three ways to answer it. Yesterday we saw one response, and that was that there's a machloket between the rabbis and Rabbi Nehemiah regarding what is the essence of a utensil. According to the rabbis, it is the structural part of it. So, for example, if you have a ladder, then the main thing are the sides that are holding it together. And if it's a ring, then it's the part that goes around the finger. Rabbi Nehemiah says the main part of an item is the functional usage part. So for a ladder, it would be the slats that you actually step on. And for a ring that has a stamp, it would be the stamp that you use. And so we define the entirety by either the structure or the functional use of it. Which is what Nehemiah says. If you define it by the ring itself, well, then it would be a kli either way. So this source of the Mishnah Kelim that says both are considered jewelry, that follows the opinion of the majority of the rabbis that say you follow the structural part of it. Whereas our Mishnah talking about women that they can wear something without, but not something with a seal, is because he follows the functional value. If it has a seal, then it's no longer considered a ring for jewelry. And that was the first way that we resolved this, which is really interesting kind of philosophically. What is the essence of an item? You know, when you are building a house, do you want the best architect and the best builder to get the structure good? Or is it the decorator and the painter that you want to be the best, because that's what you're going to see? All right, but we have that answer. Now we are at the top of the page, 60. Says Rava Amar, the second answer, listadim ketane. Yesh alech otam tachshit ish, en alech otam tachshit isha. Altogether different answer, which is difficult to read in. But back in this Mishnah and Kelim, I know, although it says at the beginning, the following is a list of jewelry for women, and it lists this, but not all of these things are actually jewelry for women. The one that does not, the ring that does not have a seal is for women, but the one that does have a seal is actually only jewelry for men. I know it's in this list, but yeah, there's a caveat. Not everything in the list actually fits the description at the top of the list. So this is difficult because you have to read in words that are not plain there. But if you do define it that way, then it would make sense because our Mishnah is talking about a law for a woman and says for a woman, only something that has no seal on it is jewelry. For a man, it would be jewelry. We can think about why there should be a difference between men and women in this regard. I guess different cultural standards for a man walking out with a seal showing his importance, how he seals documents. That kind of is showing off and is part of his dress. And for a woman that would be much less common for a woman to have a seal. Only a woman who is independently wealthy and important would have that. So it doesn't have the same cultural status for her. So that's the second answer. And the third one, actually, I think is the most straightforward answer, and it's one that I was thinking out loud yesterday that this should be the answer, but here it is on the next page. Nachman bar Yitzchak Amar, Tuma Shabbat Kadamit. You're comparing two different halachic worlds, the laws of Shabbat and the laws of purity and impurity. Tuma keli maaseh malachamana uchlihu. Regarding Tuma, what we need is it for it to be a utensil. If it's a utensil, then it has within the realm of the possibility that it can become tameh. Any utensil, whatever it is, it could be jewelry or it could be a stamp that you use like the notary stamp. Shabbat mishum masoy amadachamana en alea chotam tachshit yesh alea chotam masoy. But for Shabbat, it's not enough that it be utensil, and we have to know is it a burden? And so if it has a stamp on it, then this is a burden that you're not wearing as jewelry, so it's carrying. But if it has no stamp, then that's fine. That is jewelry, not a burden. And so you're defining these words in two different realms, and they have different halachic needs in each. So I think that makes sense as the most straightforward answer. Great. Now the rest of the next item on the Mishnah that women are not allowed to wear midirabanan is mahat she'ena nekuba, a needle that has no eye. If it has an eye, then that's a professional use. That would be asur medoraita to carry. So lemay chazia, what good would a needle with no eye be? You can't use it for sewing. She can gather stray hairs together if she's wearing a hat, and so some hairs might be falling out. So she'll tuck it in, and that way it keeps her hair straight.
Like a pin.
A pin.
Right.
Exactly. And okay, fine. Now Amar le Abaye says if so, teve kibirit tehora v'tishtere, then how is that any different from a garter for stockings? So here, if you have socks or stockings and you wear something over here on top, first of all, this item would be tahor because it's not a utensil in itself. It's not a piece of clothing in itself. It's just a strip of cloth that can hold it tight. And it does a similar function. It holds your socks up. So just like the pin is not useful in itself, so it's not a utensil, but it does help out with the hat or with the stray hairs. And this one you are allowed to wear on Shabbat. You can wear these sock holders. So why not? What's the difference between the two if that's what you think that the pin is for? So another answer is that the problem with the pin is that you'll use it to part. So a woman will use it to part her hair, to make a part in the middle. Okay, and that's the problem with it. It actually is not so clear why that would be bad. I mean, you're allowed to brush your hair. I don't know, perhaps, but sometimes brushing might cause the hair to fall out. Okay, these shanim are not clear what this would be a problem, but we'll go with it. B'Shabbat lamay chaza, amar Rava tas shel zahav yesh la al rosha, behol choleket ba'asara, b'Shabbat menichata keneged padachta. So how would you use it on Shabbat? Well, actually, this item has two ends. One end is sharp. The other end is a flat surface made out of metal. And on Shabbat, she would put it here as a pendant, as a piece of jewelry. And so that's how it would be used on Shabbat. This reminds me of the tie clips the key tie clips that we used to use before we did Eruv, right? And so it looks like a tie pin on one side and the key on the back. And then, so that is a question, right? What is it really, right? Is you go by the structure of it or the usage of it, and whether that would be permitted or not. Okay, that concludes the discussion of that Mishnah, and now we go on to men's clothing. Lo yetzeh ha'ish besandal hamesumar velo beyachid bizman she'en beraglo makah. A man is not allowed to go into a public area wearing a spiked sandal. I would call these cleats, right? A sandal with nails out that would grip the ground better. We'll see in detail what the problem is here. And also not with only one sandal, unless he has a wound. So if he has one foot that's wounded and bandaged up, and he's wearing a shoe on the other, that's okay, because it's clear why he's not wearing the other one. But if he's looks fine, and he's wearing just one shoe, then people are going to look at him funny. He says, why are you wearing one shoe? He's going to get embarrassed, and then he might take off the shoe and carry it in the shoe tarabim. So that's the problem. You can't wear just one shoe. You're not allowed to wear tefillin. In general, you can't wear tefillin on Shabbat, but you also cannot wear it in public. You'll be carrying. You can't wear an amulet. People would often wear amulets unless it's a tried and true amulet. It has to be tested out to make sure that it really works. But if it's just one you bought, a cheap one that you bought on Amazon, then that's no good. Velo b'shiryon, velo b'kasda, velo b'magafayim. All right, we'll see what all these terms mean. But if you did, you don't have to bring a sacrifice. So therefore, these are all midrabanan. It might lead to something else, or it doesn't look right for whatever reason. Okay, so here's the most interesting one: is the sandala misumad my ta'ama. What's wrong with it's a shoe after all? I mean, why can't you wear these shoes? Reminds me of today of wearing things like roller skates or how about cleats that you usually wear for soccer or football, right? So Amar Shmuel shilfei hagezerah hayu והיו נחבאים במערה ואמרו הנכנס ייכנס והיוצא אל יצא. This gezerah, this not to wear this on Shabbat, goes back to a story of the people who were hiding from the evil decrees. This must be the Hadrianic persecutions, the Bar Kokhba revolt, when they said you can't learn Torah and you can't do all these things. And the fighters and many people were hiding out in the caves. You know the caves. You probably crawled through them yourself, or at least your kids did. Here's what we're talking about: a sandal, right, with that would have these nails all around. And so what happened is that they said, listen, anyone who wants to come into the bunker, into the cave, is allowed in. But once you come in, you can't leave. Why can't you leave? Because if you leave, you don't know who's around, and the Roman soldiers are walking around looking for us. And then if you leave, they're going to see where you came from, and then you'll get us all in trouble. So nobody's allowed to leave. But if you want to come in, you can come in, because the person coming in can scout out and make sure that the entryway is safe. Okay, now what happened one time, so one time someone who was wearing his sandals backwards, and so it looked like even though he was walking forwards, he made footprints looking like that person walked the other way. And people saw it and they didn't know how they got there. They thought they thought, oh no, one of us left and he probably was spotted, and now the Romans are going to come and kill us. And they panicked. They panicked. There were a lot of people pushed into the cave, and they trampled over each other, and they killed themselves. They killed each other more than the Romans killed them. And so that was a terrible, terrible tragedy. I mean, crowd control, we know, is a huge problem. We just go to a soccer game or go to Mecca during the Hajj, right? Okay, and so in remembrance of that, when we say we're not allowed to wear sandals. Okay, if you're confused, and you should be, because what's the connection between not wearing sandals outside on Shabbat and this case, right? Where the tragedy happened because someone was wearing sandals backwards, maybe because they were sandals with cleats in them, so they made a big impression, and you could see the footsteps. So this is some kind of, in memory of that, we're never going to do this again, and then hopefully people will be more careful next time, something like that. But there's only one of three versions of the story. Rabbi Eli bar Elazar omer, במערה היו יושבים ושמעו קול מעל גבי המערה. יספורין היו שבאו עליהם אויבים, דחקו זה בזה והרגו זה את זה יותר ממה שהרגו בהם אויבים. Second version is, they were in the cave and they heard footsteps on top that sounded like boots because they were so loud. And they thought that it was the Romans coming. In fact, it was just some Jew wearing these cleats. They sounded like heavy boots. And so they said, listen, from now on, you're not allowed to wear these things. They're too scary, right? You can imagine people like traumatized from soldiers coming in. So they said, don't wear them on Shabbat.
So that verse doesn't actually mention the cleats at all, does it?
What doesn't mention the cleats?
This version of the story.
This version doesn't mention, but it's inferred because they heard the sounds of the.
You infer it from the context of what's around it, but if you would read it separately,
it doesn't actually mention them. No, that's true.
If you just would take this out and just read it by itself, you wouldn't think that they had any special shoes on.
Correct. רמי בר יחזקאל אמר, בבית הכנסת היו יושבים שמעו קול מאחורי בית הכנסת, כי סבורין היו שבאו להן אויבים, דחקו זה בזה והרגו זה את זה יותר מאשר הרגו בהם אויבים. A third version, that they weren't in a cave, they were actually in the Beit Knesset, and they heard from outside, from behind, they heard, I'm assuming, marching boots, and they thought that it was the Romans, and they all trampled each other, and in fact, it was just some guy wearing these cleats. And so they said no cleats on Shabbat. Okay, this is all a bit disconnected. Like, why only on Shabbat? So that's the next question. So they said a decree: nobody can wear these. Hey, it's not allowed anytime during the week because anytime people can get scared when they hear this. So why only Shabbat? That story, whichever version you accept, happened to have occurred on Shabbat, and so we're going to make the Gezerah only on Shabbat. Maybe really would make sense to do it any day, but we limit it to the actual case that it happened. Okay, fine. If so, then on Yom Tov it should be allowed because he said only Shabbat is not allowed. We said there's a Mishnah, and I think it's in Besa, that says that you can send things, you can send presents on Yom Tov as long as it's something useful. So if you send a piece of clothing, right, the person receiving it can wear it. So then it's fine. You're allowed to send as a present, whether it's sewn and a nice garment or whether it's not sewn. You could use it as a blanket. But what you cannot send is as cleat sandals. You can send regulars, but not one cleats. So the point is, you can't send them because they're not usable. You're not allowed to wear them on Yom Tov either. So if you're saying we made a gezerah because the original tragedy happened on Shabbat, then why not always make it allowed? Then why is it allowed? Then why is it prohibited on Yom Tov also? Why not only on Shabbat? Well, on Shabbat there are a lot of people there because there's a big assembly of people, and that's really the reason. So if people hear some Roman soldiers outside the Beit Knesset, this actually makes the most sense with the third version here. So when there's a lot of people in Beit Knesset and it's full, and then someone's walking with these cleats and they make a sound, there's potential that people will trample each other. But during the week, there are not so many people in Beit Knesset. And so therefore, we're not worried about that. The people can wear their cleats and it won't come to trouble. It sounds like, if and when we do open our Batei Knesset, maybe we'll open during the weekday first. There's less people there anyway, we can social distance. Whereas it's going to be much more difficult to open on Shabbat. Forget about the high holidays. So we might have a situation where we open on a regular day, but not on Rosh Hashanah and Kippur. We'll see what happens. Hopefully we can open. Okay. Ta'anit Hold it. If it's just about the number of people there, then on a public fast day, everybody comes down, and there's a big assembly. So she'll also not be allowed on a public fast day. So when the case happened, it was Shabbat. So the assembly was there, and it was day when melacha was prohibited, and they're all there because they can't work anyway, so they're there. But a fast day, as work is prohibited, so it's a different type of day, and they're there instead because it's a fast day. So it's a different reason why they assembled, and so Yom Tov and Shabbat are more similar, and the Ta'anit is less similar, and so that is the reason. And even afilu Rabbi Chanina ben Akiva d'amar lo asru ela biyarden b'sfina u'maseh shehaya hanemi liyarden deshani misha'ar naharot aval Yom Tov Shabbat ki hadad eninhu tetanan and ben Yom Tov Shabbat ela ochel nefesh belvad. We're going to compare this gezerah to another one altogether, where also we had to decide how much should we generalize it, and that was a case of the ashes of a para aduma, and they were transporting them in a boat in the Jordan River, and then afterwards they found that there was a source of tumah, a dead mouse or something at the bottom of the boat, and now this is a big problem because now all the ashes are impure. And so this was like, a huge tragedy. And so they made a decree that from now on, according to the majority of the sages, you can't bring the ashes of the Praduma over any body of water. And not in a river, not in a bridge, not in a boat, right? Nowhere. But Chanina ben Akiva said, no, only the Jordan River, right? And only in a boat. If it's on a bridge, it's okay. You don't have to generalize to everything else in the world. So you see that according to him, you're only making it against the specific item that happened, where it happened. It's kind of like today, if there's an accident at an intersection, so then you put a light at that intersection. No, but only at that intersection. What about the next one where it's kind of exactly the same situation? Well, right, one guy will say, okay, put lights everywhere. Someone else will say the accident happened here, just do it here. So he says, even according to him, who in another case said you specify the gezerah only to the actual act where that was problematic. That was only regarding the Jordan River, which is very different from other bodies of water, especially in Israel, and the Paraduma has to be in Israel. And so the Jordan River is the longest and deepest, and you can't compare it to other little streams that are around. But in this case, Yom Tov and Shabbat are really the same thing. And people don't distinguish between them. As the Mishnah says, there's no difference between them except for eating food. And so if you come and say one's not allowed, the other one's also not going to be allowed, and vice versa. Which is a reason I think that people say electricity is allowed on Yom Tov, but not on Shabbat. I don't think that works because in the mind of most people, their laws are equal. Except we know cooking, we can make that distinction, but not other ones. Okay, good. Okay, so before we get to the details of this, a more general thing, what is going on here? I think we see that there's three versions of the story, which means that the rabbis don't exactly remember the circumstances of how this came to be. But what it seems to be is during the Bar Kokhba revolt, there was some kind of problem. And here's a suspicion. By the way, we know we have actual archaeological evidence of these nailed sandals. This is near Yericho. Archaeologists found these nails and parts of the sandal, right? So this would be the front where the toes are. This is the heel, had a metal part there, and looks like over here also, and here where I guess it would be rub out the most, there was also metal pieces and the nails all around. So really quite amazing to actually find, right, one of these nailed sandals. And it seems that these were worn, the Romans wore some kind of boots that sounded clickety-clack, but these were worn by the Bar Kokhba rebels, by the fighters. And so I'm wondering if, in actuality, the ban against these items is so that no one should dress up like a rebel, because the rabbis don't want people to go around rebelling. So. This is like part of their uniform, and the rabbis are banning it. Okay, why only on Shabbat? I mean, really, it could be any time. The Talmud Yerushalmi gives a different answer. We just saw We just saw the Bavli that says it happened on Shabbat. That's why. Talmud Yerushalmi gives another answer. I think is better. It says that most people only have one pair of shoes anyway. You have to be very rich to have two pairs of shoes. And so if you say that you're not allowed to wear these kinds of sandals on Shabbat, then they won't buy them in the first place because they only have one set. So all you have to do is say it's not allowed on Shabbat, and then they're not going to wear it during the rest. Most likely, they won't wear it during the rest of the week either. Okay. And so the rabbis here utilize their power over Hilchot Shabbat in order to legislate something that they wanted more generally. Because they don't have an in for weekdays, just make a law. You can't wear this on Tuesday. Well, it doesn't connect to anything, and so they don't have the power to enforce that. But since they do have the power to define what is allowed and what is not allowed to use on Shabbat to walk outside in the Shut Harabim, right? So therefore, once they say it there, it will carry over to the rest of the week as well.
Rabbi, were they warned for like military purposes to step on the enemies?
Well, maybe actually used for fighting, going to kick with them, and they have these spikes in the back. Maybe right. I was thinking like they're just good for climbing and for running. Right. So they'll be very useful when you need to do that. Okay, good. Now the Talmud's going to define a little bit further. Okay, these were the three versions of the story. Okay, now the Talmud is going to define further what are these, what do these sandals actually look like? Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Shemuel, lo shenu ela lechazek aval lenoi mutar. It's only prohibited if the nails are there, part of the structure, as part of the structure to strengthen it. But if they're just there for decoration, then it's fine. It might look nice, like people today buy shoes with studs around them that look like they're military type of things, but no one would use them for that. They're just decoration. Kama lenoi, how many is the max that you can have that it's only ornament and not part of the structure? Rabbi Yochanan amar 5 bazeh ו5 bazeh. Bichanina amar 7 bazeh ו7 bazeh. So 5 for each sandal or 7 for each sandal. Bichanina is more lenient. Amar Rabbi Yochanan l'Rav Shemen bar Abba, asbera lach לדידי 2 מכאן ו2 מכאן ואחד בתרסיותיו. בחנינה 3 מכאן ו3 מכאן ואחת בתרסיותיו. So they're just explaining the placement of them. So according to the first opinion, there were 5, 2 on the outer sole, 2 on the inner sole, and 1 on the back. And according to the Bichanina, there's 3 on the outer sole and 3 on the inner sole and 1 on the back. So that's how they would be placed all around for ornamentation purposes. Amar Rabbi Yochanan Rav Shemen bar Abba, asperalach ledidi shetay mikat. Okay, metiveh. We have a question from a Baraita, which discusses the same topic. Sandal anote ose lo sheva divrei binatan bimatir b'shlosh esrei. If you have a sandal that's uneven, like this one, and say the back is worn out or that was never thick, so you put nails here to add extra padding so that it will be even. And so if you're doing that and you're adding the nails for that purpose, there's 2 Tanaim here. The first one says you can have 7, and the B says even 13. So we see 2 numbers here, 7 and 13. The 7 is the same as Rabbi Chanina, but what about Rabbi Yochanan who said 5? He doesn't have any, he's an Amorah. He has no source in the Tanaim. So Bishlam Rabbi Chanina, hu damar kebinatan, Rabbi Yochanan, damar kiman, hu damar kerebin nehorai. Oh, there's another Tanah, there's not in that source, and another one. The Tanah Rabbi Norai Amar 5 mutar, 7 asur. He said 5 is allowed and not 7, so Rabbi Yochanan follows his opinion. Amar le ifa the Rabba bar Hana, atun talmidei Rabbi Yochanan, abidu ke Rabbi Yochanan, ana nabed ke Rabbi Chanina. So 2 later students were discussing and one said to the other, since you're a student of Rabbi Yochanan, you can do 5 only. We are students of Rabbi Chanina, so we can put 7. And so I guess that was better that he could put 7, which is interesting. They didn't mind there being different halachot, different practices, as long as each person follows his rabbi. So one rabbi asked Rav Asher, what about 5? What do you mean 5? Even 7 is good. Teshamai, how about 9? 9 is no good, not even 8 is good. You see, only asking about odd numbers because you saw how they're laid out. Always be odd, even numbers on the side, and then 1 in the back. So when he says even 8 is not allowed, he was joking. You can't actually put 8. But his point was like certainly not 9.
Rabbi,
Yes.
the Tannaitic source that talks about the slanted shoe,
Yeah.
isn't that problematic because that's specifically talking about using the nails for structural purposes, not for beautifying purposes?
That's right. And you can say that Tanaim were talking about when you need it not only for structure, but like to fix something that's broken. And so that's why they made a heter there, right? There would be extra heter, which would not be in a regular case of a new shoe that you're making. And that's the final answer of the Gemara. So good, you predicted the final answer. That's correct. There's a question, a shoemaker had an idea. He said, what if you take a sole and attach it from inside, something like this, right? You take a sandal, which is generally just one flat piece of wood with straps, and then you take a leather and you make a shoe shape out of it and attach it to the bottom. And he said that's allowed, even if it has nails underneath. This is permitted. And he didn't know why. He's a shoemaker, a simple guy. He didn't know why. He just knew what it was. He knew what it was. He just heard it was allowed. You don't know the reason. The reason is simple. Once you put this on and add it, now it's a shoe, not a sandal anymore. So you change the structure. So the gezerah only applies to sandals of that particular type, not for something else. What you see here is that even though it wouldn't make sense to separate between them, they're still going to make the same clanging noise. It still could be the same threat. But these rabbis are living way after the time of Bar Kokhba. And so by this time, I mean, this is Rav Asher, this is 200 years later. And so by this time, the whole reason for the gezerah in the first place is only barely remembered. No one's going to go out and fight the Romans now. And so therefore, the gezerah sticks, but they whittle away at it until there's more and more heterim. And these heterim start already with the late Tanaim. What we just saw is, how many can you put? How many nails can you put? So there, by the end, we'll see there's hardly a case where you can actually construct a sandal that would be a problem. Okay, let's see some more examples of that. So if you take the you hammer in like this. This is the kalbus, and then instead of nails, you put them like U-shaped, and so now they come out with this shape. How about that? Is that allowed? He says, yeah, that's okay. Also, if you put lots of nails and so that there's no leather, so because you want to protect the leather so it won't get worn out, it won't even touch the ground, so you put nails all over the place. Is that allowed? And he said, yeah, that's also allowed. Another Barai, Tosefta, backs up what Rav Sheshet said. It says, "Lo yatzeh ish besandal mesumad, lo yatzeh mibait lebayit, afilu mitan lemita. Amatentan lo lechasot bo hakelim v'smoch bo kalei hamita." The original law is saying is that you can't walk outside with these spiked sandals, and you're not forget outside. You can't even walk from house to house, not even from within your house, from this bed to that bed. You can't. But you can't wear them. But you can use it for something else if you want to take take it and put it under the foot of the bed to make it even, right? You could use it as a doorstop. Since you're not wearing it, it's not mukseh. You can use it for other things. Rabbi Shimon Oser. He says, no, you can't use it for anything, because he knows once you use it to hold up the bed, then, I need a shoe. Where is it? It's right there. Then you're going to wear it because you're using it for other things. But that's not a main point for us. Nashru rov masmerotav. If you had one of these spiked sandals, but most of them fell out, and you have only 4 or 5 left, it's okay. The B says even 7's okay. By the way, the B said 7 here before he said 13. Remember, we're going to ask about that. If you changed it around and you put like leather on top, okay, a different item. If you use different kinds of nails, like this, a yated, a tas flat, or masmer, all those are okay too. They're not the regular studs that were in these nails. That's okay. And if you put nails all over the place so that you protected the flat part, that's also okay. So you see that this Tosefta has lots of cases that are okay, and this supports what Rav Sheshet said before. This Tosefta has a Tannaitic source, which means it dates to 200 or 250 or something like that. So, which is only 100 years after Bar Kokhba revolt. They see by then even the threat of rebellion was gone. They're at peace with the Romans. The new enemy is the Christians, not the Romans. And so, because the reason for the Gezerah was not applicable anymore, they didn't undo the Gezerah altogether, but they made more and more exceptions until pretty much any shoe would be okay. Now, Hagufa Kashya, you just meant Amat Nashur do Bashmilotav, Afagav de Nishtairu Betuba. In tefillah. You said if most of them fall out, it's okay. Well, most of them, there might be 30, and most of them would be 16 would fall out. But here you said 4 and 5 are left. So, well, which one is it? No, if most of them are there, but they're still there a little bit, but they got rubbed down, then it's okay. As long as most of them got rubbed down. But if they're taken out altogether, then only 4 or 5 are permitted, because then you can't tell. It looks like they weren't there in the first place. So it kind of goes back to the laws of an original, a new shoe. Almost done here. You said 4 or 5 are allowed. You said 5 is allowed. You have to tell us 4. Obviously, 4 is allowed and 5 is allowed. A small one 4, a big one 5. About 4 or 5. You don't have to be so pedantic about it, right? The small one reminds me of Caligula. Caligula was one of the worst emperors. He almost massacred the Jews. He was called Caligula because, and that means little shoe. And when he was little, they used to dress him up in a little warrior outfit, and his nickname. Okay, he went crazy, and then he died, and that's the only thing that saved the Jews from him. Rabbi Matir ad Sheba. Rabbi says 7. That's Rabbi Matir ad Shelosh. The Baraita we just saw says he says 13. This is what David Kasky said before, right? That if it's uneven, then you can put 13 because the point is to even it out. But otherwise, a new one or an even one, only 7. Well, once you got to this, remember back the question we said, Rabbi Yochanan said only 5, but there was no Tana to back him up, right? And so we were wondering, who else says 5? This is this is the answer. You don't need to answer. We found another rabbi to be Nehorai. He says you don't have to answer that because he's talking about a new one, only 5, and the other to be and other sages are talking about one that's slanted, and that's what that was. And over there you allowed more. Okay, so sometimes you find a solution to one thing that you're not looking for, but then you can end up using it for a solution for another problem altogether that you didn't even realize. Amarav Matana, Amri Larab, Amarav Achteboy, Bar Matana, Amarav Matana. And Alachai Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Shimon. Back with when this was kept and they were doing it, and they said you're not allowed to wear the shoe, and he said, Rabbi Elazar said, you're not even allowed to use the shoe as a doorstop or to make a bed even. You can't use it at all. Halacha is not like him. And you can use the shoe, just can't wear it. Wait a second, why do you have to tell me that? The majority said you're allowed to use it under the bed, leg of the bed. And this is a minority opinion. So it's obvious that we follow the majority. I might think, you know what, even though he's a minority, his opinion makes sense. And therefore, I might think that since he makes sense, because people are you can use it for this, you're going to end up using it for something else. So this teaches us that even though his opinion makes sense, still in this case, the halacha is like the majority. this is actually very interesting because it opens up another possible principle that, when you see halachas like majority, but let's say you think that the minority makes more sense, right? So according to this, actually, theoretically, you could follow the minority when they make more sense. And I guess that's why we record the minority in the first place, because he may make more sense in the future. Okay, last paragraph. Amar bichia ilav dekaduli bablai share asure sarena betuba. He says, I really would say that all these types of sandals are allowed, and I would get rid of the whole gezerah, except that I already have a reputation that people call me the Babylonian who permits things that are prohibited, right? So he was known for his leniencies. He didn't want to take the political pressure of his colleagues calling him names, and so he didn't do it, but he said, I would do it. So how many? How many would he permit altogether? Pupedita said he will allow 24. It's a lot of them. Surah, he said 22. The Surah Hazar Tarte. You want to remember which one's which, just think of someone who's traveling from Pupedita to Surah, and he has 24 nails in his shoe when he leaves, and on the way, 2 fall off. When he gets to Surah, then he has only 22. So if you remember that journey, then you'll know which one said 24 and which one said 22. Baruch Adonai le'olam. Amen.
Hazak Baruch.
Hazak emas.